Hey guys, welcome back to yet another YouTube video, and this is the review of the West Coast 2022 season. So let's get straight into it. So of course, it was a very abysmal season for West Coast. I mean, only 2 wins to their name. The worst season in West Coast history. Least amount of wins, the least amount of points, and obviously the least of course the worst placing in West Coast history, despite them getting the wooden spoon in 2010, when they of course but that was only for the 4 wins. So yeah, and then of course 2 wins obviously this year. The worst percentage, I mean 59 by far, in their history, I mean 59.8. So yeah, so it was pretty abysmal season, but they did suffer a little bit with, of course, with injury and of course with health and safety protocols throughout the year as well. First, let's go into the highlights of West Coast year, and it wasn't really that much, really, but we'll go into it as well. We've of course started off with, of course, that massive upset win over Collingwood in round 4. Nobody expected it. Nobody really did. Everybody expected Collingwood to bounce back after their collapse against Geelong the previous week, but they didn't. And the West Coast side was mostly filled with reserve players, really, because of the whole health and safety protocol thing, and also with injuries as well. And they really did deserve that win. I think I remember. I think they led for most of that game as well. So yeah. And also the round 15 win over Essendon, that was also unexpected as well. I mean, everybody thought how far Essendon after the Dons' massive win against St Kilda the previous week, but they kept up with Essendon really all game, and they really took charge in the big moments, and then came to the top of them by 10 points in a high scoring game. And lastly, obviously, Josh Kennedy's farewell game against Adelaide, kicking 8 goals and nearly single-handedly almost winning them the game also. I mean, Josh J. Kennedy, I should say, because both the Josh Kennedys, the other one from Sydney, also, strangely, retired in this year also. I mean, he's been really been fantastic throughout all his career. I mean, throughout the period of 2015 and 2016, when West Coast really up and about, of course, 2015 making the grand final, and 2016, obviously also kicking bags of goals also were really his was really his peak in his career, really, that 2015-2016 period. And there's also been a bit of debate, really, about who won the Kennedy Judd trade. Was it Carlton? Was it West Coast? I mean, there was wins for both players. I mean, Judd won another Brownlow, and was it featured in multiple finals. But I think West Coast won that one because Kennedy, became a premiership player in 2018, won multiple Coleman medals, and featured in loads and loads of finals for West Coast. And was probably instrumental in them rising from being at the bottom of the ladder in 2010 to making top 4 in 2011. That he was probably the instrumental player in West Coast rise that year. And the stats show. I mean, 37 goals this year. Wasn't you could tell it was the last few years. It was only a matter of when he was going to retire, not if. And of course, it happened this year. And I think he's added himself to the long list of great champion full forwards, champion key forwards, the game has ever seen. I think I remember. And it was a long way from that guy, from the one who from Josh Kennedy, who often, I'm not saying take the piss out of with his set shot routine when he stuttered a little, when he had a very bad stutter with his set shot routine, and everyone sort of took the piss out of him, a bit, but he's blossomed into probably one of the greatest key forward that probably West Coast ever had. So and one of the greatest forwards in the key forwards in the 2010s. I think probably with Josh Kennedy. So I hope he enjoys retirement next year and for years to come, obviously. So the lowlights, lowlights, 10 losses this year by 50 points or more. Run you through every single one of them. Round 3 against Fremantle in the Derby by 55 points. Round 5 against Sydney by 63 points. That was the game where I believe they didn't score their first goal until halfway through the second quarter. I think it was halfway through the second quarter. I think they were kept to that solitary goal until half time. I think. Round 6 against Port Adelaide by 84 points. That was when Port Adelaide got their first win of the season after a 0-5 start. Their biggest loss of the season was against Richmond in round 7 at home when they lost by 109 points. Round 8 against Brisbane by 75. Melbourne. Round 9 against Melbourne by 74 points. That was when Melbourne were just about unbeatable, really. Round 10 against GWS by 52. Round 11 against the Western Bulldogs at home by 101 points. That was the night where the Western Bulldogs had a lazy 16 different goal kickers. yeah, that's right, 16. I think it was 15 or 16, something like that. Round 17 against Carlton by 63 points, and then of course the final round of the season against Geelong this past weekend when they lost by 85 points. So if you think about it here, barring of course Port Adelaide and GWS, most of those losses I just mentioned. They're all mostly in teams that against teams that are playing finals. I mean, Fremantle, Sydney, Richmond, Brisbane, Melbourne, the Western Bulldogs, Geelong, and some that were in the 8 all year. Carlton. So yeah. So that was mostly with that. And also, the other low light was, of course, the young fit players. The main advocate for this was Kane or spokesman for this was Kane Corns during the year. Said a lot of the times that the players were unfit. And I said I kind of had to agree with that. I mean, I don't know what that boils down to. Is that if that's the conditioning, how training, somebody were training maybe, but they were just unfit really, and they just and I think probably it's because mostly. Most of the players had interrupted pre-seasons, and then obviously with health and safety protocols and injuries and all that, that they had their interrupted seasons. So because we all thought that when like the likes of Shuey, Yo, Sheed, Degoe, McGovern, all of those players who had interrupted pre-seasons with injury, and that we all thought that they'd go in the side, and then the climb up the ladder for West Coast would start. That never really happened. As it turned out, that never really happened. But I won't be surprised if they climb back up the ladder again next year. With of course that is if all their star players like Nui, Kelly, Sheed, McGovern, all of those players have uninterrupted pre-seasons to as hopefully that because of that, hopefully that they'll climb back up the ladder again. Now to rate them out of 10, I was gonna give them a 1 out of 10, but I've given them a 2. That extra point, I like to call it a sympathy point, because I am a bit sympathetic about their situation at the start of the season. Really, I mean, they really were unlucky with injury and health and safety protocols. At the start of the season. Please take a shot whenever I say injury and health and safety protocols. But I think I've said it about 3 times in this video so far. So the players that really thrived this year, I mean, the first off was Tom Barrass. I mean, he was considered in the All-Australian squad of 40. Of course, he was the shining light in that at times insipid West Coast defence. As I said, the only shining light, and with the likes of McGovern, and that being out of the side, with injury, he really stepped up this season and showed that he can be. That he can step up and be at times the number one defender in that West Coast backline. So yeah, and then Josh Kennedy, of course, in his final season, 30. I mean, as I said a moment ago, 37 goals, 37 goals this season. Of course, the leading goal scorer for West Coast again this season. And I think he's really bowed out. As I said, he's really bowed out of football in a good way, especially when he kicked 8 goals against Adelaide in his last game, which by the way almost got West Coast over the line in that game. So yeah. Guys that are under pressure, 2 guys, first off, Jack Darling and Oscar Allen. Not so much Jack Darling, but more so Oscar Allen and the key forward stocks that they have. The reason why I'm not that concerned about Darling being taking over the number one key forward role was that in the sole season in 2012, where I think Kennedy season was interrupted. He didn't play that much in 2012. I think due to injury. I think someone can please comment down below to correct, give me the answer on that. I had to look this up. I think he was injured. I think Kennedy was injured for most of that 2012 season, or it was interrupted season, anyways. So and Darling kicked 53 goals in that year, so he can step up in that number one key forward role. Key forward role. The worry is others further down because in terms of Oscar Allen, Waterman and Dixon as well. Those are the only key forwards that they've got. The problem is of course, as I said, Darling is starting to now go into the back end of his career. He played his 250. He's past 250 games. He's nearing now to the. He's on the road now to 300 games, obviously, and you never know. He probably might. He might maybe. You never know. Retire next season maybe. The problem is of course. And the reason why I'm worried about Oscar Allen is he didn't play at all this year because obviously he had a foot injury which he put him out for all year. But which is a shame because he's kicked 20 plus goals in two of his first 3 seasons in the AFL. 2019, of course, he kicked 20 goals from 21 games. 2020, in that shortened season, he kicked 18 goals from 15 games. So on average is about just over a goal a game. And then last year, he kicked 28 goals in 21 games, which is about, if I must guess, over a goal and a half a game. So he was really getting into his stride. Really did Oscar Allen. Unfortunately, when he broke down with the foot injury pre-season this year, and he never really saw him again. Never really saw him this year. Hopefully he comes back next year, and hopefully he and Jack Darling hopefully do find the perfect, of course, key forward partnership, of course, with him there, obviously. And the other problem is for West Coast, I don't think anybody talks about, is the lack of lack of key forwards. Now that Kennedy's now retired, they've only got Darling, Allen, Waterman, and Dixon in there. And if you remove Oscar Allen on that list, that's 3 that they've only had this year, which is a main problem for them for West Coast. I don't know if there's any key forwards that they have been linked to in the trade period, but that's probably or even so maybe draft the best key forward from Western Australia. Maybe, or draft the best key forward in this draft class. Doesn't matter if they're from wherever they're from, maybe from Victoria or something like that. Just improve their key forward stocks, because it's a bit limited at the moment, and it's going to get worse now. Of course, with Kennedy retired and Darling now in the back end of his career, and of course Waterman hasn't shown much in his time at West Coast, to be honest, and of course Dixon, he's really been a reserve player. We haven't seen much of him really, so yeah, and it's more the key forward stocks really that's under pressure really. And another one that's under pressure is Adam Simpson. Now, if they have a season next year that's the same as this year, where they don't win as much and obviously underperform, then Adam Simpson might well be under pressure. And West Coast do have a history of that. Long history of that, even so if you look at Simpson's record since taking over in 2014, since being premiers, they have been on a bit of a downward spiral, I think, and it culminated in this season. Of course, semi-finalists in 2019, being knocked out in the elimination final in that shock loss to Collingwood in 2020, just missing out on the finals last year, and then obviously bang, down to 17th, and that's not surprising because a lot of their star players are in the back end of their careers. so it's not surprising that they've dropped down. Yeah, and of course, the coaching endings have been I think if you discount, of course, Ron Alexander, the inaugural West Coast Eagles coach back in 1987. Of course, he only lasted the 1 year, but obviously John Todd, obviously in 1989, he delivered them only to 7 wins, and he got the sack, and then obviously was replaced obviously by the great Mick Malthouse. And then obviously after Mick Malthouse left to go to Collingwood, of course Ken Judge went from Hawthorn back home to Perth, and of course that 0-1 season was abysmal. I mean only the 5 wins. I think he only lasted 2 years. I think he had it was 11 wins from 44 games, I believe. No, I think 12 wins from 44 games. Between 2000 and 2001, which was pretty terrible, really. And then of course John Worsfold's final season, they missed the finals again. This time they only had 9 wins for that in that 2013 season, as well. So yeah, and I think that 2001 season with Ken Judge, until this year, I think that was their worst. I think that was their worst percentage really, with 65.95. Even their 2010 season when they had a percentage of 77.09, that was actually better. That was actually better than their 2001 season until now, where they just blown it out of the water with that. So you never know. You never know, mate. Maybe next week, probably there'll be the big announcement that maybe Adam Simpson's resigned. Yeah, you never know. Footy moves on very. Footy, it's a pretty unpredictable thing, is AFL football. So you never know. But I do expect Adam Simpson to stay there, and I think if they do climb back up the ladder again and very much improve on last season, then there's going to be no pressure on Simo. If it's the same thing like this season where they only get like 2 or 3 wins, then the pressure does come on Adam Simpson. So yeah. So that is just about it. For West Coast, as I said, a very terrible season. I mean, 2 wins, 17th on the ladder compared to 9th, just missing out on the finals in 9th position. So yeah. So like this video, share this to anybody who's a West Coast fan or an AFL fan. Comment down below. What where do you think Adelaide will be next year? Do you think they can contend for finals again, or do you think they'll stay where they are now, and that's near the bottom of the ladder? I'd like to hear your opinion. And of course, one last thing is somewhere down there, click the big red button which is labeled subscribe. So until next time, guys, until the next review, I should say, I'll see you guys later. And I've just forgotten it. Yeah, now it's come back again. Wherever you may be, may the sunshine or the moon shine on you.